Hello friends. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I'd clocked 24 years pounding the pavement in central Chicago when the call came in that still knots my stomach whenever a similar dispatch crackles over the radio. It was a crisp Tuesday afternoon in mid-May, the kind where the wind off Lake Michigan carries that faint tang of water and exhaust, and the looped skyscrapers cast long shadows over the bustling streets I was riding, with Officer Valdez that shift, a greenhorn with barely 10 months under his belt, still wide-eyed at the city's underbelly. Dispatch directed us to the Riverside Plaza on Dearborn Street for a persistent odor report. The super, Mr. Patel, greeted us in the foyer, his face pinched like he'd swallowed something sour. He mopped his brow with a sleeve, recounting how tenants on the 9th floor had been bombarding his line for 4 days straight. He'd rapped on Unit 9C himself, but got zilch. The resident, he said, was a reclusive type named Daniel Morrow, who pulled overnight shifts at a medical distribution center and kept to himself. No parties, no complaints, until now. The stench assaulted us as the elevator pinged open on 9, a vile cocktail of decay, bodily fluids, and a sharp antiseptic bite that clawed at your throat. Mr. Patel hung back by the call buttons, waving us on while pinching his nose. Valdez and I advanced on 9C, pounding the door, declaring, "Chicago PD!" The folks in 9B and 9D peeked out, masks improvised from towels, eyes watering. After 3 fruitless hails, Mr. Patel authorized entry. His master key slid in, but a beefed-up chain latch barred the way. We radioed for tools and held position. That's when a memory surfaced, cold and accusing. 6 months back, I'd rolled here with Officer Kowalski on a disturbance beef neighbor. In 9D griped about crashes and muffled shouts. Morrow had answered promptly, all sheepish grins and fidgety hands. A lanky fellow, around 38, with pale green eyes that skittered like minnows, claimed he'd been rearranging shelves, knocked over a lamp. No visible harm, no one else in sight. We bought it, filed the report, moved on routine for a one-off with no red flags. That oversight would haunt me like a bad debt. The ram arrived. We breached in seconds. Inside defied the reek. The den sparkled. Couch cushions plumped. End tables dust-free. A faint lemon scent from recent scrubbing. The galley kitchen gleamed. Pots aligned. Fridge humming softly. Even a bowl of ripening bananas on the counter. Valdez quipped it outshone his bachelor pad, but the odor intensified, pulling us deeper. We cleared the powder room, spotless. A spare room turned den, books alphabetized, desk bare save a laptop. Then the corridor to the primary suite. At its end, a door fortified like a vault. Heavy-duty hasp with a combination lock. Frame braced with steel strips camouflaged in fresh paint. Valdez nudged me, nodding downward. A 1-inch clearance stuffed with rags from within, seeped in dark blotches. The smell peaked here, searing our sinuses. We bellowed again. "Police! Open up!" A whisper of sound replied, faint, strangled, like words garbled through fabric or a stifled plea. Human, unmistakably, from beyond Valdez bolted for cutters. I stayed, voice raised. "We're here to help! Hang on!" The noises escalated, frantic scratches mingling with whimpers. My pulse thundered. Whatever lurked behind wasn't right. Valdez returned. We snapped the lock. The door yawned, unleashing a miasma that buckled our knees. Pitch black inside, shades duct-taped over panes. In the far nook, on a soiled futon, huddled a figure. Emaciated woman. auburn locks tangled to her hips, clad in a faded scrub top, wrists cuffed with cable ties to a chain anchored in the concrete. As our beams hit her, she thrashed weakly, emitting those guttural cries. And we saw her lips sealed with surgical staples, precise as a seamstress's work, crusted with old blood. Valdez summoned medics. I crouched, murmuring reassurances, severing the restraints with my multi-tool. "You're safe," helps en route. Her gaze locked on mine, frenzied relief warring with dread. She pawed at the staples, gagging. I restrained her gently. "Docs will fix it easy now." Up close, horrors multiplied. Toes missing nails, scars puckered over, arms bruised in faded patterns. Bedside table held the nightmare's toolkit. IV nutrition bags, electrolyte mixes, painkiller sans labels, a ledger in tidy script, intake logs, hygiene routines, vitals charted back 8 months. Medics stormed in, assessing, prepping transport. I retreated to the hall where Mr. Patel paced with arriving units. "Shaken," he queried. I countered. "Any kin for Morrow?" A cousin mentioned once out west, estranged. Kowalski appeared, drawn by the chatter. His complexion drained as I briefed him. We shared the gut punch. 6 months prior, inches from her. Her cries perhaps drowned in insulation he'd added. The weight crushed like concrete. Scene blurred. Forensics swarmed, IDing her as Emily Morrow, 31, vanished from Oregon 9 months back. She'd flown east post a family call, per her partner's filing, supposedly aiding her sibling through grief. Daniel Morrow? Vanished. Vehicle absent from the lot. Phone dark bolo issued. Techs unearthed more. Hall closet stashed her effects. Wallet, keys, duffel with outfits pressed. Medical gear, staple guns, anesthetics, filched from his job. His PC yielded obsession. Gigabytes of Emily's pics, vacations, birthdays, candid scraped online. Stalked since adolescence. At the ER, post a grueling staple extraction, Emily rasped her tail. Lured by Daniel's plea of depression, drugged on arrival, awoke chained. He professed safeguarding her from toxins, society, stress, independence. Staples followed her yells during a plumber's visit. He'd tend her meticulously. Liquid feeds via syringe, sponge baths, story time from childhood books. Deluded this was devotion. Neighbors' sounds tortured her. Laughs, footsteps, our prior knock. She'd banged futilely, silenced by reinforcements. Daniel nabbed 3 days on at a truck plaza near the border, hunkered in his sedan. Dazed, cuffed, he babbled of rescuing Emily, oblivious to cruelty. Interrogation chilled. He viewed her as fragile china. Post-parents crash in their youth. He the guardian eternal psych-eval. Severe attachment disorder, savior complex. Life sentence handed down. Emily's remote testimony, voice firmer, rebuilding in therapy. Eyeing art school case revamped protocols. Repeat calls, mandate full sweeps. Consents logged, refusals flagged for review. Therapy mandatory for me. The echo of missed cues lingered. Emily's card arrived months later. Gratitude, a snapshot of her at a lakeside, radiant. Break room staple now. Lesson for newbies, probe perfection. Trust unease. Horror often masquerades as normalcy behind the unopened door. I'd been on the job long enough to know the city hid its monsters in plain sight. But this one burrowed deep Daniel's apartment, that locked room. It wasn't just captivity. It was a twisted shrine to control disguised as care. The staples weren't mere restraint. They symbolized his silencing of her autonomy, her voice literally stolen. In the weeks following, I replayed every detail. The pristine facade masking the rot, how his job afforded the tools of torment, the ledger's clinical detachment, like she was a patient, not kin. Forensics uncovered more layers. Soundproof foam glued behind drywall. Ventilation rigged to recycle air, minimizing escape sense. He'd planned meticulously, perhaps years, triggered by her independence. Her move west, career in graphic design, life untethered from him. Emily's account painted a childhood shadowed. Daniel, elder by 7 years, assumed protector after the accident, smothering her with overzealous rules, vetting friends, monitoring calls. Adulthood brought distance. His calls grew frantic, pleas laced with manipulation. The crisis lure? Fabricated, her tea spiked with warehouse sedatives. Waking chained, he monologued. "The world's poison. I'll purify you." Feedings were ritualistic. Blended nutrients funneled past wired jaws, vitamins to stave malnutrition. Hygiene, clinical, detached, like tending a doll. Nights he'd perch bedside, recounting shared memories warped into justifications. "Remember when I saved you from that bully? This is the same. Saving you from yourself." The smell? Accumulated waste from inadequate facilities. A bucket system, emptied sporadically. Chemical undertone, disinfectants masking it all. Neighbors recalled oddities post her arrival. Thumps dismissed as remodeling, a sick relative excuse when queried. 1 in 9 B noted muffled cries, chalked to TV. Our prior visit, she'd heard boots, voices, flung herself against restraints, producing the furniture noise Daniel's smooth lie. Our cursory acceptance, it stung. Therapy unpacked that. Survivor's guilt transposed. The what-if loop. Sessions helped. I journaled, ran Lakefront Trail at dawn, channeling regret into vigilance department-wide. Ripple effects. Training modules added hidden victim scenarios, emphasizing intuition over protocol checkboxes. Valdez, the rookie, matured overnight. His initial awe at the clean space flipped to wariness of veneers. Kowalski and I debriefed often. Beers at a Wrigleyville dive. Dissecting cues missed. Daniel's evasive gaze. The faint chemical whiff even then Emily's recovery inspired. She volunteered at shelters, advocating for missing persons tech. Her letter detailed progress. Voice therapy restoring volume. Scars fading under tattoos of birds in flight. Symbolizing freedom Daniel's cell? Solitary echoes his isolation. Psych holds him in perpetual care. Ironic justice. Appeals denied. He writes rambling missives, claiming misunderstanding. The case file, thick as a novel, sits in archives. A cautionary tome. Patrolling now, I scan facades deeper. That too quiet high-rise, the overly polite resident horror isn't always blood and screams. Sometimes it's the locked door and a spotless home. The siblings' love turned cage. We saved one, but the ghosts of oversight linger, reminding, listen closer, look harder, open every door. It was one of those evenings where the humidity hung thick in the air, like a blanket you couldn't shake off, making every breath feel labored. I'd been cruising the outskirts of suburban Phoenix for over a decade by then, and I thought I'd witnessed every flavor of strange the desert night could throw at you. I was paired with Officer Ramirez that shift, a solid vet with 15 years in, but new to our precinct after transferring from Tucson. Dispatch buzzed us around 10:45 p.m. about a vehicle idling unattended in the parking lot of the Desert Vista Mall off Camelback Road. Headlamps blazing, passenger door ajar. These calls were dime a dozen. Forgetful shoppers, quick dashes inside that turned into hours, or the occasional joyrider ditching a hot ride. But the caller's voice, a security guard wrapping up his rounds, had an edge, mentioning how the engine had been running for at least 40 minutes with no owner in sight. We rolled in under a sky streaked with heat lightning, the mall's neon signs casting erratic glows across the vast asphalt expanse. The lot was mostly barren at that hour, save for a cluster of employee cars huddled near the service entrances and a lone SUV under a flickering sodium lamp. The vehicle in question, a mid-2010s SUV, silver paint dulled by Arizona dust, sat isolated near the rear loading bays, away from the main shopper zones. Its motor purred steadily, high beams slicing through the gathering dust devils whipped up by the evening breeze. The door gaped open, as if the driver had bolted mid-sentence, leaving the interior light to spill out like an invitation to whatever lurked in the shadows. Ramirez and I exited the cruiser, our boots echoing softly on the pavement as we scanned the perimeter. The first thing that pinged my radar was a reusable shopping tote slumped on the front seat, contents spilling slightly. A thawing frozen pizza, a six-pack of soda-sweating beads, and a bunch of bananas already spotting brown. Whoever owned this had planned a quick errand, not an abandonment. The key fob dangled from the ignition, a pine tree air freshener swaying lazily, stirred by the AC vents. Standing there, with the engine's low rumble vibrating the air, no sign of life around, it felt wrong, like stepping into a paused movie scene where the protagonist had vanished without warning. Ramirez radioed the plates while I orbited the SUV, flashlight beam dancing over the ground. Dispatch responded quicker than usual, registered to a local named Thomas Harlan, flagged missing just 18 hours prior by his wife. Last sighted leaving their home in Mesa after a family barbecue, heading out for last-minute supplies. Now here sat his ride, provisions warming in the cab, door flung wide, and not a trace of him. The hairs on my arms stood up. This wasn't a wander-off. Ramirez's face tightened as he relayed the info. We both knew the stats on adult abductions, how they rarely ended clean. Our initial canvas yielded little. The lot sprawled wide, cracked from years of relentless sun, with tumbleweeds snagged in the chain-link fence bordering the adjacent arroyo. But about 15 yards out, my light caught irregular gouges in the dirt, scrape trails etched into the sandy soil, mingled with darker patches that gleamed wetly. They trailed toward a ragged barrier of mesquite bushes and creosote shrubs that fringed the mall's back edge, the kind of scrub that clawed at your skin if you brushed too close. My throat went dry, imagining a struggle. Someone hauled through that thorny maze against their will. Ramirez summoned reinforcements while I knelt closer. The marks were fresh, soil disturbed in frantic patterns, wedged in the underbrush. One of Thomas's loafers, strap snapped, sole caked in fresh mud. Nearby, a crumpled pharmacy receipt fluttered, time-stamped 2 hours back, smudged with what forensics would later confirm as blood. The scatter wasn't random. Wallet tossed here, phone there, screen cracked, battery dead. It screamed resistance, a desperate bid to leave breadcrumbs or summon help. The mall's surveillance? Spotty at best, focused on storefronts and ATMs, not this remote corner. Within half an hour, the lot transformed. Cruisers flooded in, strobes painting the scene in pulsing crimson and sapphire, radios crackling like static storms. The quiet that had cloaked our arrival shattered under the weight of commands, K-9 units barking, and the snap of evidence markers. As we breached the brush line, thorns snagging our uniforms, we uncovered more. Snapped twigs, slick with residue, a shredded shirt cuff impaled on a branch, fibers matching Thomas's described attire. Each find sketched a grim narrative. This wasn't voluntary. He'd battled fiercely. The eeriest clue emerged when a rookie spotted deep ruts in the earth beyond the shrubs, broad and parallel, like sled tracks or something hefty dragged across. They meandered toward a service alley looping behind the mall, gravel strewn for semis and dumpsters. By then, my mind raced. This felt orchestrated, exploiting the dead zone between lots and roads. We traced the path until it faded on the alley's potholed tarmac, tire burns suggesting a hasty peel-out. No cams there either, just a rusted chain dangling from a gate post, long ignored. It gnawed at me how exposed it all was. A bustling mall by day, yet at night, a void where a man could vanish without a witness. We expanded the grid, door knocks on nearby strip mall shops, queries to late-night commuters on Camelback, even grilling a graveyard shift barista at the adjacent coffee drive-thru. Zilch. No one clocked a scuffle, a shout, nothing. That vacuum of testimony roared louder than any alarm. It was as if the desert itself had conspired to mute the event. Evidence techs swarmed. Swabs, casts, baggies sealing the shoe, the receipts, the bloodied scraps. But as the hours ticked, no breakthroughs. When I finally slumped back in the cruiser at dawn, the SUV's spot loomed empty, chalk outlines mocking where tires once rested. That image seared in. A life interrupted. Pizza thawing forgotten. Door beckoning the unknown. We briefed detectives at shift's end, but the lot's image lingered like a bad dream. In the days after, leads trickled. A grainy ATM cam from across the street caught a shadow near the SUV around 9 p.m., but pixels blurred identity. Thomas's wife, frantic, recounted his routine. Barbecue laughs, a kiss goodbye, promise of ice cream for dessert. No enemies, no debts, just a quiet accountant with a fishing hobby. Canvases widened, gas stations, motels along I-10. A tip line buzzed with cranks, alien abductions, Bigfoot sightings. But one rang true. A trucker at a rest stop recalled a similar SUV trailed by a dark van, but plates mismatched. Weeks blurred into months, the case chilled, headlines fading like monsoon rains. I drove that route often, eyes drawn to the spot, imagining Thomas's final moments, stepping out for a forgotten item, then ambush. The brazenness chilled, daylight fading, yet public enough for passers-by, but no eyes caught the act. Was it random, targeted, a drifter's whim or calculated grab? Theories swirled, human trafficking rings scouting lots, or a grudge from his past unearthed. His phone's last ping triangulated nearby, then nothing. Jammed or destroyed therapy sessions post-case unpacked the guilt. Why didn't we patrol earlier? But logic countered. Random chance. Still, it reshaped my patrols, lingering in lots, chatting guards, trusting that inner itch Ramirez and I debriefed over tacos, vowing vigilance. Thomas Harlan remains missing, a file gathering dust. But his echo drives us, reminder that horror strikes not in alleys, but under glaring lights where we least expect. The desert nights feel heavier now, winds whispering unanswered questions. We search, hope dimming like mall lights at closing. Yet I scan shadows, praying for closure, knowing some voids stay empty. It was one of those shifts where the rain drummed endlessly on the windows of the dispatch center, turning the Seattle skyline into a blurry watercolor of lights and shadows. I'd been handling 911 calls for 12 years by then, juggling the overnight hours while trying to keep my life together as a single aunt, raising my niece after my sister's accident. Sleep was a luxury I snatched in short bursts. Meals were whatever I could microwave between calls, and most nights blurred into a routine of overdoses, car crashes, and the occasional lost hiker in the Cascades. But nothing could have braced me for the call that still replays in my mind like a scratched record. Its silence more terrifying than any scream. The line connected just after 1 a.m., during a lull when the storm outside seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. At first, there was nothing, just the faint hiss of an open connection. I leaned into my headset, repeating the standard greeting. 911, what's your emergency? No response, but then I caught it. Soft, rhythmic breathing, deliberate and controlled, like someone meditating or trying not to panic. It wasn't the ragged gasps of a medical crisis or the whimpers of a child prankster. It was measured, almost calculated, with subtle rustles in the background, as if the caller was shifting under covers or pressing the phone to fabric. I asked again, my voice steady despite the prickle at the back of my neck. This is 911. Can you hear me? Do you need help? Still nothing. The silence stretched, heavy and oppressive, broken only by those breaths. Inhale, exhale, pause. It felt intentional, like the person on the other end wanted me to stay, but couldn't risk a word. My fingers flew over the keyboard, initiating the trace. The system pinged back quickly. A residential address in the quiet suburb of Bellevue, east of the city. A neighborhood of craftsman homes backed by evergreen forests that swallowed sound like a sponge. The listing showed the phone registered to Rebecca Harlan, 36, a divorced mom living with her young daughter. No prior calls from this number, no history of domestics or medicals. While the trace ran, I kept talking, probing gently. If you can't speak, tap the phone twice for yes. No taps. But the breathing continued, now interspersed with a distant creak, like a door hinge protesting in the wind, or perhaps footsteps on old wooden stairs. My heart rate ticked up. I'd handled silent calls before. Strokes, home invasions where victims hid. But this one carried an undercurrent of dread, as if the caller was signaling through absence. Protocol demanded action. I dispatched units to the address, relaying the details to the responding officers. Possible silent distress, potential intruder, or medical emergency. Keep the line open. The lead responder confirmed over the radio. I did, listening intently as the breaths grew shallower, more labored, with occasional whispers of movement. A soft thump, like something dropping lightly to the floor, or a drawer sliding open. My imagination ran wild. Was she hurt? Hiding? Why not speak? The first officers arrived within 8 minutes, their updates crackling through my earpiece. Front doors cracked open, one reported, voice low. No lights on inside, no vehicles in the drive. Approaching now. I gripped my mouse tighter, the rain outside mirroring the storm in my chest. The breathing on the line faltered then, becoming erratic, closer to the receiver again, as if the caller had picked up the phone. A faint whimper escaped, barely audible, like a sigh muffled by a hand. Then, nothing. The line held, but the presence felt gone. Entering now, the officer whispered. Their flashlights would be cutting through the dark living room, sweeping over furniture. Kitchen clear, purse on the counter, keys inside. Looks like someone was prepping dinner, veggies half chopped on the board. My mind raced. Rebecca had been home, going about her evening. When something interrupted, the officers moved upstairs. Master bedroom, bed unmade, lamp knocked over. Phone on the carpet, screen lit, call still active. That's when the connection dropped, the abrupt click that echoed in my ears like a door slamming shut. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at my monitor, the call log frozen at 9 minutes and 47 seconds. The sergeant came on. No sign of the resident child's room empty too. Bed made, toys arranged neatly. No struggle downstairs, but the back sliders unlocked. My stomach dropped. Rebecca's daughter, listed as 8 years old in the database. Where was she? The team fanned out, checking closets, the basement, even the attic access. Empty. The house felt lived in, yet abandoned mid-moment. A half-eaten apple on the coffee table, browning at the edges. A tablet on the couch, paused on a kid's show. Laundry folded, but not put away. Neighbors were roused from sleep. Porch lights flipping on one by one along the rain-slicked street. Most hadn't noticed anything odd. Rebecca kept to herself since the divorce, working days as a teacher while her girl attended after-school programs. One elderly couple across the way mentioned seeing a utility van parked nearby around dusk, idling longer than necessary, but couldn't recall the logo or plates. Another swore they heard a child's laugh earlier, but dismissed it as neighborhood kids playing despite the weather. Each account added layers to the puzzle, but none fit together. As the night wore on, I stayed glued to my station, fielding updates while handling other calls. A fender bender on I-5, a domestic in Capitol Hill. But my mind looped back to Rebecca's line. Those breaths, the distant creak. Had she been alone? Restrained? Why the open door? The child's whereabouts gnawed at me most. We pulled school records, contacted the ex-husband, alibied in Portland, even pinged her cell. Straight to voicemail. Location services off dawn, broke gray and drizzly, the center buzzing with shift change. The investigation escalated. Forensics dusted for prints. K-9 units sniffed the yard. They found faint footprints in the mud behind the house. Men's size 11, leading to the tree line where the forest met the property. No clear tire tracks, but a snapped branch suggested a hasty exit. Rebecca's car sat in the garage, untouched. Her wallet, phone charger, even her laptop, all present. If she'd left willingly, she'd done so with nothing but the clothes on her back. The breakthrough on the daughter came around 7 a.m., safe at a sleepover with a classmate, arranged days prior. The girl was confused, tearful. Mom had dropped her off with hugs and promises of pancakes in the morning. No mention of plans, no odd behavior. That ruled out a parental snatch or runaway. What remained pointed darker. Abduction. Swift and silent, I clocked out exhausted, but sleep evaded me. Home in my cramped apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, I replayed the audio file we'd archived, every dispatch call recorded for review. Those breaths, steady at first, then quickening, laced with subtle gasps. The creak, analyzing it later. Tex suggested it matched the house's old oak floors, and that thump, perhaps a body hitting the ground, or a door closing softly. The child's toy sound I'd imagined. On enhanced playback, it resembled a muffled cry, staples of desperation. The case dominated local news. Seattle mom vanishes from home. Silent 911, call raises alarms. Tips flooded in, sightings at bus stops, a woman matching her description wandering Green Lake Park, but none panned detectives dug into her life. No debts, no affairs, a clean divorce. Co-workers described her as dedicated, friends as reliable. The ex had an ironclad alibi, confirmed by hotel cams. The utility van led? Dozens in the area. None matched timelines. Weeks turned to months. I volunteered for overnights, half hoping for closure, half dreading another silent line. Therapy helped unpack the guilt. Why hadn't I pushed harder, recognized the plea in the breaths? But cases like this taught harsh lessons, sometimes evil whispers, not roars. One eerie twist emerged 3 months on. Rebecca's sister, clearing the house for sale, found a locket in the mailbox. Rebecca's, containing her daughter's photo. Chain repaired as if never broken, postmarked locally. No prints, no note. A taunt? Coincidence? It reignited the file, but leads dried up. Rebecca Harlan remains missing. Her story a cautionary whisper in training seminars I still man the lines. But now I listen deeper, probing silences for hidden screams. That call, 8 minutes of breaths taught me horror hides in the unsaid, waiting for someone to hear.